So, is the Asus ROG Strix Scar 18 perhaps the most powerful laptop on the planet? Well, let's find out.
Welcome to OWNorDisown, where tech decisions are made easy.
So, Hidevolution were kind enough to send me their Asus ROG Strix Scar 18 to review. It's a very nice machine, and I actually did do a live stream on it. And if you haven't seen that live stream, make sure you click up there. What I did there was actually, I installed games, tested them live in front of my audience, and also did some CPU tests. So this is a summation of those tests, and also I've had a bit more time to play with it, so I can give you my honest opinion what I think of it. Now, as I say, Hidevolution did send it to me, and on their webpage, they can get a 4080 model, which starts at $2,999, or my unit, which is the 4090 model, 175 watt, at $3,900. So certainly it's not chump change. It is very expensive, and that's my main criticism. These are expensive. In fact, looking at the prices, I'd probably incline to stick with the 4080 model there, but still it's quite pricey. And looking at the specs we've got, we of course have the 18-inch 2560 by 1600 240 Hz 3 millisecond mini LED panel, and it is very nice and bright. It's vibrant. It's not a full glossy display, but I wouldn't say it's the most matte display I've seen. You do get some reflections, so the colours do pop because it certainly is bright. I measured 89% of DCI P3 colour space and 86% of Adobe RGB, so it is a very nice panel. Say it's 3 millisecond, has a brightness of 1100 nits, so it is bright. It is HDR, and I didn't notice any blooming per se. Also, the ghosting performance was very good because it's 240 Hz. I've often tested mini LEDs at like 120 Hz, and you do get a bit of ghosting there. Here, it was perfect. So it's a good gaming panel, and I think it's also good for photo work, video work. Now in HDR mode it is 10-bit, in standard definition SDR mode it is 8-bit. So, but you can change that to 10-bit, and it is very nice. And when you unplug it from the power source, it changes from 240 Hz down to 60 Hz. And that actually got me about 5.5 hours of battery time, and it's a 90 watt hour battery. And that was at 50% brightness, streaming YouTube with battery saver on. So I thought that was pretty good, because this has a 14900 HX, an i9, and that's, certainly a 13th gen was pretty power hungry, wasn't it? We would be lucky to get 3 hours, perhaps 3 to 4 hours. So I don't know whether Intel's done some tweaks here, but it certainly did quite well. Now, it is a Gsync panel, has advanced Optimus, and the software does allow you to switch, between Optimus, or just using the integrated GPU, or having the dedicated GPU only. So that's good. My advice: just give it on the advanced Optimus, and it'll automatically switch to the GPU that's required. So, and that works flawlessly. And I see you do have Gsync. Say that you'd have a 4090 at 175 watts. So, as stock for the thermal interface, it has liquid metal on the CPU, and it has just regular paste on the GPU. Now, for $30, HID did replace the pads with Fuji Poly pads. That's $30 there. And I found that often when they do that, it does increase the stability, and I've had no issues with what they do. And in fact, if you go on their website, you can see what they do for testing, how they test. They do various stress tests: fire strike, time spy, pass mark, men test. Also, they do test 30 to 60 minutes of intense online gaming at ultra settings. So that is good. Now, like I mentioned in the live stream, I would like if they were to put perhaps a certification inside the box detailing all this, and perhaps even put the temperature. Something like that would give me a good feel-good factor. I'll suggest that to them, and hopefully they'll take that on board. Now, they also have on their website frequently asked questions, which is quite good. If you've got any questions about is the warranty transferable and all this type of stuff. So I'll put links in the description so you can actually see that. And they also have found what's called is their top, which stands for tuning and optimization package. Now, this is it's a little pricey. It's $299, and you may think, "Oh, I'm not doing that." But what's involved? Well, there's actually quite a list of stuff, the tweaks that they do, and I found it when I did the Clevo X370. That ran flawlessly. There was no stuttering. It was perfect. I had no issues at all with that. The same is generally true on this machine, but I would say in like Hogwarts Legacy, I was getting stuttering unless I deactivated the efficiency cores. And you can do that in the software. It's pretty straightforward. You do have to do a reboot. And once I did that, gameplay was flawless, very smooth. So, of course, that's got nothing to do with the tweaks they can do. But generally, the machine was fast, snappy, and had no issues. And, you know, it's worth looking at, you know, because you do get a lot of bloatware on machines these days. So have a look at that top service that Hidevolution do. Now, for SSD, we have a 2TB SSD. The read speeds were like 6,900 megabytes per second, and the write speeds about 6,400 megabytes per second. So it's pretty fast. So if we look inside the laptop, we have 2 SSD slots. One of them, of course, is occupied here. We do have a 3 fan setup, which is pretty good, and I think that probably does help with the thermals I see here. And we have 5 heat pipes in all. 2 of them are shared between the CPU and the GPU, and you have 2 heat sinks at the sides, and you have quite a lot of, it looks like a big long heat sink at the top. So the cooling is great on here. I'd say that in gaming wise, the temperatures were, you know, CPU about 77 to 80 degrees, and the GPU around about 73 degrees. So, you know, that was fantastic. In terms of the fan noise, turbo mode did get a bit loud. I would say it was around about 51 decibels. Performance was about 44, and the silent mode about 42. And the difference in terms of frame rate, there's probably around about like a 10% difference, I think, between turbo and performance. So that would put it pretty much on par to unit on performance would be closer to like a 4080 type of performance level. So, you know, that's why I think the 4080 is probably the best value one to get, because you might as well stick with that then, because the difference between a 4080 and a 4090 is 10 to 12% at most, really. So not probably stick with that. Silent mode, the fans, yeah, it was nice and quiet, 42. And even in the live stream, we tested gaming on battery, and you know, that was workable. You know, you might have to do frame generation or DLSS, but it was quiet and the frame rate was fine. The build quality, I think it's not too bad. I mean, it's, you know, it's hard to tell, but I think this is a metal deck. In terms of the panel doesn't have any flex, so that's quite rigid. Underneath, it's all plastic though. But what the plus I felt was the chassis was really cool when gaming. It was quite amazing. Probably the coolest I've ever had. Often, I mean, it'll get really hot up here, which is not a big deal because you don't put your hands there, do you really? But it was even fairly cool up there. Very cool where your wrists go, and underneath was fine too. So if you're gaming on your lap, no problem. I was very impressed with the chassis thermals. As for the speakers, there's around about 80 decibels, which is pretty par for the course these days, which is, you can get pretty loud. Now, I did have to use the Dolby Atmos to do that, put it on dynamic mode, because before that it seemed a bit poor, and I was a little bit surprised because my memories of like the G14 and that seemed to be louder. So I think the speakers could be better, considering the size of the machine. It's 18-inch after all. You know, I'd like to see like a subwoofer in there, give a bit better bass. But unfortunately there's not. But it's still not too bad. Now you do have up here some separate keys. You've got the volume controls, using the mic. You've got the power mode options here, switch between the silent, performance and turbo. And you've got the Armory Crate software up there. And the keyboard, you know, it's not mechanical now. I think, you know, for the price I wouldn't mind a mechanical keyboard, but not everybody likes mechanical, right? So it seemed fine for me. It's RGB, per key RGB. Comes with various different, you know, patterns, wave and all that type of stuff. But all in all, it's not too bad. And you'll notice the emblem here, the ROG emblem, that changes colour too, and you can alter that. And of course, around the back, we also have RGB, and I think that looks fairly decent, doesn't it? And the webcam, It's actually a 720p webcam. But I thought, you know, when I did my testing, I thought it was 1080p because it was pretty clear. So I must say it's probably one of the best 720p webcams I've seen, and the microphone was fine as well. So I was quite pleasantly surprised. I mean, I would like to see a 1080p webcam, but all in all, you know, it was pretty decent. You do have a separate number pad, of course. It does tend to leave a few oily smudges, you know, which is a shame. You're going to have to clean it up a bit. You do have a bit of a pattern there, which does sort of make it look a bit different. What I didn't like so much, because you have a pattern, it's sort of like a semi-translucent up here. So it's like it's got a plastic coating on top. On top of perhaps the metal, I don't know, or perhaps it is plastic, but because it is translucent, and that makes it look dusty and a bit dirty, you know. So I didn't like that so much. And the same can be said around the sides, right? You got like a plastic border around here, and that makes it look all around the edges, and that makes it look a bit cheap too. So I think for like $3,900, it's not the best, but the hinges were fine. They're nice, and you know, it's very stiff. You know, you're not going to get that much wobble there. So I don't think that's too bad. I just wish it looked a little bit more premium, really, for the price that you pay. I ran Cinebench R23, and the CPU in performance mode was about 80 degrees, and in turbo mode around about 93 degrees. So I didn't think that was too bad at all, really. And in terms of performance, with an undervolt, now you can do an undervolt if you go into the BIOS and do an undervolt. So I did apply a 70 millivolt undervolt, and I got like 32,500 or so, which was pretty much on par to the MSI GT77HX with the 13980HX, and it's about the same as the 7945HX. At stock, it was a little bit lower though, so a little bit disappointed there. It was 30,726 points. But that being said, you know, it's still better than generally a 13900HX, so there's a bit of an improvement there. Yeah. And the performance mode, it dropped down to around about 27,500 points. But all in all, that's all right. Let's have a look at Cinebench R24, or Cinebench 2024, I should say. Multi-score score of 1,856 points. Now, compared to a desktop 13900 KF, which I've got, is about the same. Which I was like, wow, that's quite amazing. So yeah, and even the single core score was 125, and my desktop i9 13900 KF got like 124. So that was pretty impressive. And when you compare it also to, say, my Tracer 7, which is the 13900HX, I got a multi-core of 1,457 points and single core score of 116. So the 14900HX definitely is an improvement over the 13900HX. So that's good. And I did like the power efficiency on the battery test. Continuing looking at the CPU performance, let's have a look at TimeSpy CPU. So here the 14900HX got 16,764 points, and that's compared to you know, the Clevo 13900HX got slightly less. However, the Legion 7i 13900HX got a bit more there. And if you look at the TimeSpy GPU score, the 1490 got 21,951 points, and then we overclocked it by 300 megahertz on the memory and 190 on the core. We got 22,177. So that's pretty much in line to what the Clevo got with its 4090. In the TimeSpy Extreme CPU score, they got 10,735. That was certainly higher than the 13980HX that I've tried, and much faster than the 13900HX in my Tracer 7. And looking at the GPU score, pretty much, you know, very good. About 10,800 points when it was overclocked, and 10,690 at stock. So definitely better than the 4080. So looking at Cyberpunk 2077, the Strix Scar 18 got 82 FPS versus 76 on a 4080. So yeah, around about a 10% difference there. Far Cry 6 using ultra settings, compared to the 4090 in the Clevo, it was actually a bit behind it. I don't quite understand that. The 4090 in the Clevo certainly seemed to be doing pretty well, but compared to, say, the 4080 in the Alienware, it was pretty similar to that too. So there's something going on And with Far Cry 6, it was like perhaps the CPU was holding you back or something. Wasn't the best performer in this game. So in Hogwarts Legacy, I did mention before that, you know, to get their best performance, I had to disable the E-cores, and here I show that. So in disabling the E-cores here, we got 76 FPS, and the 1% low, sorry, were 32. If you compare that to a bit lower down at the charts here down the bottom, you know, stock would get like 5 FPS, low 1% lows, and 61 average. And it was those dips that were causing a problem. You get all these stutters. So disabling those E-cores really does help, and it brings it up slightly above even the Clevo 4090. Now in The Last of Us Part 1, I mean, of course, I didn't test the same scene, so you're going to get some variation. Here I got 108 FPS versus the 4080 86, so there's a bit of a variation there, but without a doubt, this is ultra settings, and that performed great. Now in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, ultra settings 2560 by 1600, of course, 129 FPS and 127 when I disabled the E-core. So not that much difference there disabling the E-cores here, but I'll just throw that in there. And compared to the 4080, yeah, it's about another 10% difference, slightly more than say perhaps 10 or 11% difference there. And finally, Watch Dogs Legion, at stock 60 FPS compared to 54 with the 4080, so again 10% difference, and an extra 2 FPS when you overclock it. So overclocking didn't really make that much difference, but again the temperatures weren't affected too much, and it's easy to do that within the Armory Crate software. Just move a few sliders and you can do it. Now I did do a latency mon test in the live stream, and unfortunately it failed straight away. It didn't do very well there, so I think still if you want a laptop to pass that test, you've got to use an AMD machine, right? So they seem to have a better success rate, but never mind. But all in all, I'd say it's a decent machine. I just wish it was a little bit cheaper. I personally, if I was going for this, would go for the 4080 model. You know, for the 10% boost in performance you get, you always have to put it on turbo and deal with the higher fan noise. But still, the webcam is decent. The screen is very nice. I mean, if you can see that there, but it's vibrant, and we've come a long way in the past 5 years for screens, haven't we? And I do like it's 240 Hertz, and I also like that it drops down to 60 Hertz when you're just on the battery. Software is easy to use. I had no stability issues at all, and it's fairly easy to get into. You do have to be careful that I think it's 10 screws to remove. The front ones are shorter than the rest, so just make sure you keep them separate. So on the left hand side you have the power connector, you have the Ethernet, HDMI 2.1, USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C with DisplayPort, Gsync and power delivery, and a Thunderbolt 4 with DisplayPort and Gsync. And yeah, the one you want to use for if you want to power it by USB-C is the one nearest to here on the left hand side. Now there's no ports around the back, but you do have a couple of USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type A's on the right hand side. So my next machine to test is actually the MSI Titan 18. Ooh. I'll do it as a live stream. I'm just setting it up now, and I'll put a notification in YouTube when that's coming up. It'll be next couple of days, and you know, it's expensive. It's $5,500, so it's not cheap, but it's the same specs as the Asus one. All right, well, that's it. Well, thank you very much for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.